last time I talked, or I got a communication from this caller, he was on the Irish Loop, delivering newspapers. Talk about a hands-on reporter and publisher. Craig Westcott, you're on the air.
Good evening, Mr. Rowe. How are you this evening?
Great, thanks. Nice talking to you, Craig. How are you making out?
Oh, good, thanks. I promised yourself and Greg that I'd call you this week, and
yes.
I apologize for taking so long to get to us.
No, you got your business to you got your business to attend to, and your writing to attend to. Well, I fully understand that, sir.
Right on. Well, I appreciate it. I guess you wanted to talk to me, Bill, maybe about Muskrat Falls or my time in the opposition office.
I did. Well, first of all, there was some confusion when you left the opposition office, Craig. There was some confusion as to whether you were encouraged to leave by the change of leadership or whether the change of leadership gave you the out that you were looking for to get back to your publishing and reporting and your newspaper business. Which was it?
Well, what happened was when I initially took the job, it was on the understanding that I would stay until the election, help Ron Jones fight the election, and then help with a transition afterwards, whether it was as Premier or as opposition leader again. Mm-hmm. But when she left early of her own accord because of personal health reasons, I saw it as I guess she felt and I felt mutually that really I wasn't really needed in there anymore. That with a new leader coming in, a new leader should have the privilege of placing his own people.
Yeah.
And I agreed with that entirely. And so fortunately for me, I was let go a little bit early, and I'm back to the papers where I wanted to be in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, a lot of us are glad to see you back at that, if you don't mind me saying, Craig. You were probably a great asset to the opposition office with your knowledge and your style, your incisive style and so on, but a lot of people, myself included, a lot of people thought that your talents were not wasted, of course, but being, could have been used better elsewhere, namely reporting objectively on what's going on in our province.
Well, that's very kind of you, but it's probably worth explaining why I took the job in the first place as well.
Yeah.
Because if you cast your mind back to the time, Danny Williams was still riding shotgun in the province.
Yeah.
The Liberals were down to 4 seats, 2 of which were filled by MHAs who had personal health issues. Mm-hmm. So really, they had a 2-person house most of the time.
Yeah.
It looked like they could very likely get wiped out altogether in the coming election. Mm-hmm. And I was publishing 2 papers that were being blacklisted by the provincial government. Probably the only 2 newspapers in the country that were being actually blacklisted in terms of advertising. And
the government would not advertise in your papers at all?
Would not advertise, and as much as they could, they refused to give me interviews unless I actually cornered them in a public venue or something. Yeah,
unless you're in a scrum somewhere, in which case, they could hardly ignore you.
Yeah, so when the job came up, I said, this is my personal business is actually being persecuted by this crowd, and the Liberals need a bit of help. Maybe I'll give it a try for a while and come back to the newspapers after the election.
Why do you figure you were blacklisted? I mean, so you have made from time to time some intemperate comments, some of which were personal, sort of behind the scenes, like that email you sent to Elizabeth Matthews concerning the Premier's state of the Premier's health and so on. Was that after the fact, or was that a cause of your blacklisting?
That was the email that I sent was well after the fact.
Right.
I think that we were looking at a regime in this province for the last 8 years that did not brook dissent or criticism or opposition in any form. I mean, you can recall when Abitibi Bowaler was expropriated.
Yeah.
There was a lawyer in Grand Falls raised questions about it, and the Premier at the time suggested he was a traitor. Said it was traitors for this man to ask questions. Mm. And when they had a little contretemps with Memorial University about the presidency, these sorts of things, people were traitors for asking questions. And so I like you say, I kind of write columns and editorial opinions that are no holes barred, like yourself.
Yeah.
And they tried to squash that. And then, in 2006, when I started the paper, shortly afterwards, I was hearing reports from people that, not the Premier himself, but close supporters of the Premier, several of them, were actually calling some of my advertisers and asking them not to advertise in the Business Post.
My goodness, I mean, that's Duplessis or Mussolini or something. I mean, that's pretty hard stuff, Craig, in a democracy.
Well, that's trying to put a small business out of business, and it's also trying to shut down a a voice of democracy in what's supposed to be an open society.
Yeah.
And then in 2009, I think it was, I sent the Premier an email just to tweak his nose, which is an awful email, I admit. And it was just sent to him privately through Elizabeth Matthews, his communications director. I didn't make it public. I just did it for a bit of badness, a bit of mischief.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't make it public. But when the Liberals hired me 20 months later, that's when they chose to release that email and unleash a full campaign trying to stop me coming out of the gate, I guess.
They sat on it for a couple of years just about and hoarded it up to use against you, you're saying.
That's right. And even Russell Wangerski mentioned in a column in the Telegram afterwards that they were actually shopping the email around. They'd go to, the Premier would give an editorial board or something at the Telegram and bring it up, that guy Westcott, he questioned my sanity or said I had syphilis or whatever. This sort of thing. I guess in a way to sort of, hurt me with my peers in the industry.
Yeah. Well, Craig, that was a rough old time for sure. Part of it, of course, you were author of your own sort of misfortune in that regard, that email, as you say, but that was a slip on your part. But generally speaking, you have been a hard-hitting, feisty. I've had tremendous admiration for your reporting abilities, your digging, your probing, your writing, no punches pulled, no holes barred. And to hear that you were strong-armed or intimidated or the shakedown occurred, with other people to try to ruin you, that's pretty hard stuff. Is this new government under Dunderdale doing the same thing? Have they put any advertising in your publications?
No, they still haven't started advertising, but it's funny, Bill, when Mr. Williams was still in the Confederation building, it was like the PC. A lot of these guys on the government side I know from covering them over the years, and some I would even say are personal friends.
Yeah.
And but they wouldn't be seen with me around the house in public. But literally the day after Williams left the building, I had guys walking up to me on the government side, and some of them I didn't know personally at all, shaking my hand and saying hello, how are you, and trying to introduce themselves.
Oh yeah, interesting.
It was that kind of a hold that the man had on his government, and that's just the kind of regime that it was.
Well, Craig, we really appreciate that. Now, that's a big issue we just covered there, and we need to talk about that again in the future, the freedom of speech and the bullying tactics of powers in our democracy, when it comes to freedom of speech. The other matter having to do with the NDP, as we lead into the election, if you can spring loose the time and give us a call back maybe next week and talk about that and your take on Muskrat Falls and the NDP position on it. Can you do that, Craig?
I will. Bill, can I leave you one thought, or actually the listeners with one thought?
Yes.
And that's, no matter how they vote this election, they should really try to pick out the person in their district who is the best person, not whether with the government or any particular party.
Yeah.
My own observance from being in there for 2 sessions of the House is that we have no real, or very few real legislators or statesmen. There are no Robert Bonds or Peter or Michael Cashins or no John Crosbys anymore. Very few.
Yeah.
And these are the people who are making multi-billion-dollar decisions, such as Muskrat Falls, which I really think is a fiasco, a boondoggle.
Right.
And we need people who have the guts and the intelligence to stand up and examine these matters and do what's right for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and not do something because they're told to do something. All
right, Craig, I think you can make a valuable contribution to the unfolding debate as we head towards this election, and I do hope, I know how busy you are trying to keep your publications going and so on, especially against fearful odds, you might say. But anytime you'd like to give us a call to talk about any of these things based on your reporting experience plus your political experience recently acquired, we would really appreciate that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time, Bill, and have a good evening. I really enjoyed the show.
Thank you, Craig. Really appreciate your call.
Okay,
all the best. Bye-bye. Craig Westcott, one of my... one of the persons I admire in the journalistic field, I have to say, quite candidly. And anybody who would like to comment on anything he said tonight, by all means do so.